Hi, and welcome to the Improvisors podcast. I'm Neil Thomas, and this is my co-host, Kevin James.
Thank you, Neil. In this podcast series, we interview improvisers about their histories, their practices, their aspirations, and more.
Today, it gives us great pleasure to be in conversation with Melbourne improviser David Wells. We talk with him about becoming a horse, his 8 years of encounters on a railway station with 7 to go, and he shares his manifesto and reminisces around his unfettered, free-ranging childhood. He unlocks his theory of building bridges and explains the importance of community.
We hope you enjoy this conversation as much as we have.
Good morning, David Wells. It's a great pleasure to have you on the Improvisers podcast. How are you this morning?
Very good, thanks, Neil. Lovely to see you.
Wonderful to have you with us, Dave. We're looking forward
Thanks,
to this
Kevin.
very much.
Lovely to see you too. Thanks very much.
Maybe we'll start with the Old Chestnut. How did you come to improvisation, Dave? What drew you to it? What were your early experiences?
Oh, well, look, I was a child once, unusually. And I think as a child, you're not so much drawn to improvisation, but it's your main modus operandi. And so as a child, I was improvising left, right, and center completely 100% of the time, maybe 110%. And it was a wonderful time in my life, and something that I just completely took for granted, as you do when you're a child, because you're completely immersed in this world of fun and play and creativity and without an expectation most of the time, if you can get away from your parents long enough. But my parents were very hands-off, and I'd roam free, and it was just a wonderful time. So in terms of when did I first get involved in improvisation, I'd say definitely in my early life as a child. Maybe even in utero. Probably I was an active fetus. I mean, who's to say? That makes a lot of sense. That's how I want to be remembered. He was an active fetus. But I think that was early beginnings, and I think going on from that, there's family stories, but my philosophy on improvisation is very much that, well, for me, is I'm really trying to get back to those beautiful days of young and free, transformative, creative, playful, unfettered joy and freedom, where transformations and learning can just happen continuously, and the days were long, and the sun was beautiful, and the trees were full of leaves, and there was things growing in the ground, and there were friends to be made anywhere you could make your best friend. You'd get to the beach and you'd look around and you just go, oh, I'm going to make a friend over there. Let's make friends. Go and play. And my mum would say, go and play with someone. I go, yeah, great idea, great. I'll go over. And then you just go over and you make friends. And I think that was a great time. And I think that, and if you want inspiration in terms of your life and the way to be in the world, you've got to think back to those sort of fundamentals that are so human, and the best part of being human. Was really like that. It was exciting. It was so exciting, and the vulnerability was always there, of course, and the sense of sensitivities that you had at the time, and the way you could dream during the day, and you could look out the window and create worlds in your mind with your friends, and all those things were just great. So I think as an artist, I'm trying to get back to that. And when I feel like I'm doing well as an artist, I feel like that it is those connections, it's those intimate friendships that I have with people I work with. I just love that. And the people that I have worked with, I've been enormously lucky to have collaborated with so many people over time. Neil Thomas and Kevin James, definitely part of that as well. And I'm just enormously grateful for that opportunity, that intimacy, that connection, that intimate connection that you can have with people you're working with. And Neil and I we've worked together for many a decade, and the fantastic times, you know, that just never seem to be able to be calculated. There's just so many great connections, and I cherish that. My beautiful wife teaches at Deakin University, and she was asked, after talking about her career to the students, she was asked, what's your most successful achievement in performing arts? And she replied, after thinking for a while, she's thoughtful and smart, as well as beautiful. She said, the formation of long-term friendships. And I think that's a great quote. That's a great aspiration to have in terms of performing arts. And having said that, I think, you know, the audience, I do see the audience as collaborators. We're all in this together. I think that's a big part of it all. There's joy and pleasure. I think the joy and pleasure that you have as a kid, the non-judgmental aspect that if you can leave that behind, I think that's very helpful. I think as a kid, hopefully you're more non-judgmental when you're young. I think there's certain stuff that gets beaten out of you along the way. I was reflecting late last night, knowing I was talking to you today, and I thought back to my first day of school, and I turned up, and it was just great. I was making friends, and you know, everyone was together, and it was so exciting. And I remembered to go to the toilet, and you know, major successes here and there. And the teacher was beautiful and lovely, and was wearing a mini skirt. I hadn't seen one up close, and it was fantastic too. And then we had lunchtime, and everyone was out there racing around, and I'm running, and I'm looking at the whole school, and I'm finding new faces everywhere, and it was just this wonderful, joyous experience. And then this large bell, boom, 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 goes like this, and then everyone just runs inside. And I went, "Where are you going? What's happening?" And I can remember just the kids that were near me that I was talking to and playing with. I don't know what we were doing, but just grabbing them and saying, "Don't go, stay out here." But they all went in, and I just remember being the only kid in the playground and just going, "Well, it's still beautiful out here. It's still sunny, and the freshness of the school uniform, and the colours in the grass, and the still yet to be explored places. We're all still there, and everyone was just going back inside." And I can just remember walking around and just couldn't find anything to do particularly, and eventually meandered my way after a long period of time back to the classroom. And I walked in, and the teacher wasn't there, and all the kids were saying, "You're in so much trouble." And I kind of went, "Oh, why?" And they said, "Miss Young's really worried." And I just went, "Oh no." Anyway, so Miss Young comes in eventually, and she's crying, and she just goes, and she just says to me on my first day, and she gives me this big hug and a smoocher. And I just, in some way, that story just sums up how, not that you have freedom beaten out of you, but you find a way of conforming. And I always came in when I heard the boom, 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 always came inside every time, never missed it. In fact, even now, there's a school down the road, and I have to resist, because I feel the pull of just having to go back inside. So you never fully escape. You never fully escape your past, and some of that's a horror story, never escaping your past, and some of it's the most joyous things that can bubble up in your life as well. Your beautiful childhood and your beautiful friendships and all of those things associated with being young, which are just so lovely. So yeah. But you know, the writing was on the wall. The family stories was that I think when my sister, we had 6 kids, and I was number 2, tallest. And I think before my sister was born, I apparently, and I haven't got clear memories of this, I was probably 2. I pretended to be a horse for a really long time, and I'd have my food on the floor, and I'd drink out of a bowl, and I wouldn't talk, and I would make horse noises. I'd crawl around the floor. I would gallop around standing up. The whole thing was horsey. I mean, I can only imagine, but I think later on, it's probably one of the greatest moments in my life. That sort of commitment and joy to just pretend and play. I think that was so the writing was on the wall, and I think all kids have got that capacity. I don't know if I was any different. Although my mum and dad were pretty creative people. My dad resisted the creative urges all his life, unsuccessfully actually, but mum was just off the wall creative person.
Maybe that's a good segue into thinking about how you became a professional improviser. I know you went to college, and then maybe how did you come up with Wunder? And
well, that's a really interesting one. I gotta say, I love one of your quotes, Neil. Make your vacation your vocation. You remember saying that?
I nicked that off Mark Twain.
Oh, we're just stealing from everyone. There you go, Andrew Morrish. We're lying, cheating, and stealing. But in terms of getting into all that, look, I think that as a child, I've described myself as a child, and that's a lovely way of seeing myself. I think as a young adult, I just had so much emotion. I had so much emotion. I think even as a child, as a teenager, as a young adult, I just had so much emotion and sensitivity and vulnerability, and so much joy and so much anger and so much frustration, and I just seemed to be overflowing everywhere. I had to put it somewhere. And I didn't realize that I was a dancer, but dance was my special thing as a young kid. And so I thought, I was a special young kid that I had this dance thing that I had. But went to the football just this year, and the kids were doing Auskick down on the ground, which was fascinating, because I started counting the number of movements on the field that the kids had that were just expressions of emotion that were more related to dance and not related to football at all in a certain way. And I just went, oh no, it's not just me. It's just all the kids are like that, just moving around, wriggling and jiggling, and it was fantastic. But I had a lot of emotion, and I needed somewhere to put it, and I wanted a life. I had heard this quote early on in my life as a young man, and quote was, I don't know if it was Mark Twain, but you can confirm with me on this. Most men lead lives of quiet desperation. Oh, God help me. I really don't want that. I didn't like anything about it. Quiet lives of quiet desperation. It just, so I was determined not to end up that way. I think possibly my dad had led a life of quiet desperation, and modeling myself on him, I thought, no, I'm really not going to end up like that. But so I was determined to try and find somewhere to put the energy and and something that was significant and something that was meaningful. And before that, I'd done a lot of sport, and that had a great physicality and a robustness. But then there was an emotional side of this. I gave this competitive sport away, and I was just winning all the time. It started getting boring. And, what can I do? I'm pulling out the trophy again. But So I got more involved. I discovered dance, and I realized that dance had always been with me, and that, you know, as a young child running home from church, getting home early enough to actually put the record player on and then dance. I had a good half an hour before other people would meander home and just dance in the kitchen around. That was kind of like, that was there. So the dance thing was a very important aspect. It was exciting. It was physical. It was playful. And then I started realizing that the idea of dancing and having fun, and dancing and being humorous, and dancing and being comic, in terms of the emotional mix, was a lot better than dancing and being serious the whole time. So I actually thought, look, there's a range of emotions that you can play with here, and that the idea of ballet and contemporary dance were kind of limiting for me, because I like the idea of actually other ingredients in there. And around about that time, I was studying a postgrad at Melbourne University in movement and dance, and had this wonderful teacher that was completely fantastic and encouraging, and it was Linda Nichols, Al Wunder's future wife. They weren't married at this time, and not only was she a great teacher, but very positive, and also the most beautiful dancer. And I, just watching her dance, I was absolutely enormously moved. It was like hearing Beethoven for the first time, or something incredibly transformative, just seeing her dance and the emotions that I felt. And then I went, well, there's a whole world out there, and you can get involved in it, and you can never do enough, and it can be totally absorbing, and the people can be really interesting. And Al Wunder was also very accommodating, and he really gave us the keys to the car. You can drive anywhere you want. You can drive anywhere. You can drive with anyone else you want. And that was just liberating, and he was free ranging, so that wasn't like a direct line. You have to learn A, B, and C. It was, you could go anywhere you wanted to, and this liberty and freedom, it was very much experimental, and you know, and it was performance. It was working towards performance the whole time. So, you know, you get a lot of attention, which, you know, 6 kids, it's like, I loved the attention as well, and I loved the challenge, and I loved the emotion of all of that, and the risk taking that it was, and the vulnerability that was there, and the intimacy that you have with an audience, making them laugh or making them cry or whatever. That was all lovely. And then and I suppose along the way, you know, meeting up with Born in a Taxi, independent order of oddfellows, they were just enormously, I felt this kindred spirit thing. They were fun, and they were interesting, and off the wall, and complicated and diverse, and so we were really learning from each other. So you had Lynn Santos in Theatre of the Ordinary, and Andrew Morrish, the man with a planet on his shoulders. And so you had all these influences in the early days. Nick Pappas, quirky, funny, generous, supportive, creative, musical. And then you had people like Brenda Wade, who'd done all this European theatre, but she was very sensitive, and Penny and Caro and Richard, that had done all this wonderful movement stuff and mime stuff and clown stuff, but it was all those personalities. And so we would all sort of get into the car together, or maybe it was, by that stage, it was a bus. And you know, we'd started making maps of everything we could think of that was related to helping us improvise and perform and all that sort of stuff. And then shortly after that, I met Neil Thomas, who was basically, give us a look at that map. And he cut it into small pieces, rolled it into a ball, and threw it into the air and shot it with a pistol. And it splintered everywhere, and caught a light. So it was just like all this raining sparkles were just falling out of the night sky, and then we all stood there with our tongues out, and it was very sacred. It was very, very sacred, and he was just laughing like a maniac the whole time. going, I've done it. I've ruined your lives. I've ruined your lives. And but do you remember actually saying things like, I've ruined your life? Do you remember that great quote? We're all getting our makeup on. We're all putting our makeup on and stuff. And Neil's getting he's just hovering around like the eagle at the back. The eagle will swoop soon. I've ruined your lives. I've ruined your lives. Anyway, so they were very dynamic and exciting, confusing times, but just so wonderful. And it was really just like, it was back to the old days of meeting people on the beach. You never knew what you were going to get. It was exciting. It was free ranging. It was unfettered. It was playful. It was those wonderful things. And bit by bit, you get more confidence and familiarity with the performing and with the idea of communicating and developing stories together with other people in collaboration. So the collaboration was always important to me as part of improvisation. And there used to be a lot more adrenaline and in the early days, and that was always a worry, because it clouds your judgment a little bit. It gives you a lot of energy, but it can cloud your creative processes, and you're working with a group, so you have to sort of find ways of solving problems together and recognizing what's happening, and you'd be looking at all different sorts of scores that you give yourself, and to make things work. And everybody's so different, and so you're accumulating all this information from everybody else who've got all these different backgrounds and skills and particular interests, and then you're putting them all in the mix and trying to work out something that's coherent or something that you can understand. But I think I did some work in London with a guy called Lindsay Kemp, and contemporary of David Bowie's, an old Shakespearean clown and rather famous. But his big thing was lose your inhibition, just completely lose any judgment, any inhibition, just let yourself completely go. Everyone take off their clothes. It'd be completely like that. And he was smoking joints and he had terrible teeth. And anyway, but his thing was just like, just go wild. And there's no waiting for anyone. If someone's performing out in front of you and you think you could hold the space for longer, then just come on and do your thing. And if you feel like you can keep holding it, then hold the space as much as you can. Keep things going. Keep the audience involved. And if anyone else thinks they're starting to lag and that they can do better, then just come on. It's this wild. There's a guy called Harold, had this big mohawk, sort of like in the 80s. And it was just, he would just come on and take over the whole time. He'd be doing anything. You'd think he'd be going, okay, but then he'd just come on, take over. And it was just impossible to get him off, because he could be more interesting. I wonder what he's doing now. Anyway, but he could be more interesting just through sheer force of creativity. He was just subversive and dynamic and interesting. Good old Harold. But I think that journey sort of ended up, and I think you talked about, you mentioned something about making money out of improvisation. Well, look, I do believe we need improvisation as people. I don't think it's something that's for artists. I think that for me, there's improvisation in the world. There's two people improvising, talking is a conversation. Two people improvising, laughing is a comic improvisation. Two people playing soccer is improvisation with ball. You have to, a whole life is an improvisation. You can make your plans and everything else, but you still got to, making your plans is an improvisation. There's chess is an improvisation with the brain. You're responding and you're initiating and you're trying things out and you're being intuitive and you're being impulsive and all through your life. So it's not just a performance thing. And I have come to feel like more like lately that sometimes the best creative improvisations that I'm doing might be a conversation with a guy over the fence at home, or with the kid in the street who's lost their dog, or there's dramatic improvisations like that, or the person who you've just met who's got an art exhibition on or something like that. There's there's all sorts of interesting people you can. So it's about connection and engagement and working together and finding common ground and all those sorts of things. And how to be reassuring, how to support other people, how to let people support you. That's a skill in itself. Some people are really great at being supported. I don't know how to do it very well, but anyway.
So, David, you speak of that breadth of sort of life and living relationally and collaboratively as improvisation. And how heartening it is to hear that. I wanted to say something, and this might not be appropriate using the word royalty, but I sort of feel that you are improvisation royalty. I don't want to use the word king, but maybe a king. But you've been around forever, and you have done so much in so many contexts. And here today, you still speak about free-ranging, unfettered playfulness, and joyful collaboration. How wonderful, after a lifetime of performative work, to hear you still so enthused and in some ways seemingly unfettered by it all. That's not a question, is it? But
thanks for the compliment. I'm an imposter in terms of the king thing. There's the thing about kings is there's not many of them, and I'm definitely on a medieval scale. I'm kind of feel like I'm something like a pickpocket or something more like that. Definitely more on the lower east side of the kingdom. But yeah, thanks very much. It's a lovely thing to say. I think the interesting thing about all of that, and I think when you're talking about making connections with people and the longevity of what you're doing, you're really trying to build bridges. You're really trying to do significant and meaningful stuff. And when I say that everybody in general needs improvisation, I think we all need to look at the important values in our life and look at quality of life. And so applying improvisation to different groups, intellectually disabled people, working with those people for a long periods of time, they're improvising kings.
Yeah.
They're my royalty. Homeless, brain-injured alcoholics with the great sense of humor and the depth of emotion, they're the people that I hold up in terms of their openness and their generosity and their sense of vulnerability and their willingness to share and their sensitivities, I suppose, as well. And look, I think people in aged care that I'm spending a bit of time with these days, working as a clown, that's liberating for me because I'm curious, I'm naive, I'm very much the young person very young child in the room with these people, and there's great joy and connection and engagement and play and those sorts of things in that situation. And also it's liberating for them, so they can help me out. They can, we can play together. We can live in the imaginative world where there's no mistakes, and we can create together in a safe environment. It's very collaborative and beautiful, and it's just a privilege to be in those situations.
It's
in terms of bridges and Born a Taxi and all the outdoor theatre, and Neil and the outdoor theatre that we've done, the Urban Dream Capsule, the generosity and love that something like that, and the work that Taxi do and the work that Andrew does as well. It's inspiring. It's inspiring, and it's a privilege to do. And if it inspires and people can get something from it, that's great, because we're absolutely trying our hearts out. We're putting our heart and soul into something. There's blood, sweat, and tears in terms of our commitment to that over the time. I just hope. I saw an interview with Pina Bausch who shares a birthday with Teddy Whitten, and also shares a birthday with me. I love that. And when I was younger, I saw this. I was about 24, and I saw this video, and she's going, "I just want strengths. That's what I want. Now I want in my life. I just want strengths. I just need more strengths." And I was going, but she's been a Bausch. I mean, she's done such great stuff. And there was a film of her going around at that time. And I went, well, how fantastic is she? She doesn't need strength. If she any more strength, she'll explode. But then you get to a certain age and you just go, for me personally now, I just go, gee, I think I want more strengths. I can smoke the imaginary cigarette, but I need more strengths. You know what I mean? Strengths. And I kind of feel that way now. I just need more strength. I need more strength.
One of the things you've been engaged with for a while, Dave, is Weekly Ticket down at Footscray Station. And I think someone who's signed himself up for 15 years of a performance,
Yes,
that's an absolute commitment to I will have strength, and perhaps an indication that you do have strength. Talk to us a little bit about that. Maybe what you're getting from it.
Look, again, it's a privilege to be down there. I'm not the most interesting person there at any time. It's about that sharing space, sharing life together. I've done it for nearly 8 years, and I can't lift my knees as high when I run. The coordination's falling apart. Yeah, I'm basically crumbling compared to what I was like 8 years ago. But having said that, I'm using every bit of my experience of working with people like you and Taxi and Andrew and the people, and I'm also responding to the people that are down there. So just like the old folks in the nursing homes taught me how to be Freddie, the people down at the station are actually teaching me how to be David Wells' Weekly Ticket. But the project goes for 15 years. I won't be stopping after 15. There's no reason to. That's one great thing. Every week I've got an opportunity to have a gig in the same place. I'm part of the biological ecosystem down there. If it was a swamp, I'd be in there swimming around. But it's great to have those connections. It's got its broad performance aspects, but it's also got its intimacy as well. The conversations down there, the sharing that people do, the connection to the staff, railway staff, the relationships build up over time, the surprise, the great things in humanity, my own curiosity, my own sense of adventure, my own sense of excitement, my own sense of sharing is very much equaled by or overwhelmed by the people who are down there, the community who are down there. And it's great to come in every week and give myself that permission to completely switch into my most sensitive, my most playful, my most connected. All of a sudden, I go down there and the sky's blue. What a beautiful set. The lighting's changeable but fantastic and unpredictable. There's a wind factor on stage. There's huge, large vehicles coming in on wheels with hundreds of people on that stay for a minute and then tear off again. People are coming from around Australia. They're coming from the country. They're coming to shop. They're coming to learn. They're coming to Australia for the first time. Recently, they're going off to lead their lives. There's all this past stories down there. And there's present stories in the moment, and there's future stories happening on platform 2. So it's a wonderful, interesting, emancipating for everybody, and people. And it is a collaboration. So I'm down there with other people more recently, which has been great. But and you boys have been down, but the idea of collaborating more with the audience. It's a gift. It's a gift to me, and it's also hopefully a gift for other people. And to do anything they want to do with it, I think it's completely up to people. People, it's an art. I think it's an artwork, and people can interpret it any way they like, and they do, which is great. Like it can be very playful, it can be very fun, it can be absolutely full over crazy laughter, and it can just be I think I said beautiful, but yeah, it can be beautiful as well. And that's not hard. That's hard. Beautiful's hard. And beautiful can be really easy and accidental, so.
David, just following on a little bit from Neil's question, I also would love to know a little bit more about what you've found over 8 years. What's changed over 8 years? What's accrued over 8 years in terms of your knowing? How do you find the sort of process after 8 years of still keeping it alive and becoming what it might? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, it's you've heard of the slow food movement. This is kind of like the slow art movement. So it's like cooking very slowly. The flavor gradually changes. The organic compounds of whatever you're cooking seems to change. There's great depth in talking to other people. There's great depth in it's just deepening all the time. So there's great depth in collaborating with different people that have come down there at different times, people from overseas or local students from Deakin University or high school, or homeless people down there, or whatever. So there's a lot to hold. And I think when I started it, I felt like I was really looking up at this beautiful mountain, but I couldn't see anything but the first layer of the clouds, but there's so much more that's being revealed over time. And that's nice. And it's nice to have a regular gig as an artist. It's part of my practice. And I think I'm lucky at the moment that most of my practice is not in a studio situation. It's actually performing and getting paid to perform, which I love. And so it's that sort of situation. And over time, we all want to belong somewhere. We all want to feel like we belong somewhere. And I do feel like I belong down there. And I feel like I'm accepted. I allow myself to feel that I'm accepted down there. And that the other really great thing is, and this is slightly subversive, Neil would like this, he's subversive, is it's turning something quite extraordinary, the idea of a man dancing around with a chair, performing arts. All the walls have fallen down, and that's become normal. It's become normal for me to have a man dancing down the station. It's become normal for other people, but it's still got a sense of wonder and excitement about it. It's still unusual, but when you really, really have a good look around at Footscray Station, there's so much unusual. There's so many individuals. There's so many artistic choices strolling around. There's so much excitement and dismay and heartbreak and joy and love and all those things I was talking about as being a young child. That's still all there. And I think as a performer, that's what you want, whether you're at Footscray Station, whether you're working in aged care, performing, whether you're walking around doing a music gig in Ballarat, or whether you're on a giant colourful bike that Neil and I have done. You're trying to find all of that, and you're trying to switch people on, you're trying to switch some things off, you're trying to get beyond that judgmental, adult, colder exterior to find the vulnerable child that's playful and warm and open and receptive. And I know Neil often talks about, and Andrew Morris talks about, cracking people open. And that's an interesting way of thinking about relationships to an audience. But so over time, I think those sort of things are really great to realise. Merriffy Carr, the performance director, did a PhD on it. That's really interesting if anyone wants to listen to that. Tim Humphrey and Madeleine Flynn. Oh my God. Such fine, incredible people, incredible artists. And I think to be a good artist, to keep improving as an artist, you have to improve as a person. So I think they're a great role model for me in terms of how to improve as people. And they are so generous, so insightful, so thoughtful, so clever, and so full of love in a wonderful way. And I think they're also great principles. So the community that you get around you, you need a community around you. I've been enormously lucky with the people that I've met along the way, the community that I've had around me. And to be able to share the things that we value highly in terms of our artist manifestos for ourselves as individuals and as a group. To be able to share that with the wider community in a wide variety of situations, and to build bridges from the artist world and plant ourselves in a window in different parts of the world with the Dream Capsule and Neil. And you know, those sorts of things are really important, but also have to be valued by, I think they're valued by other people, but not necessarily. But Australia's, you know, could be more supportive of the arts. Just a little suggestion. Not complaining, just I think everyone can improve. Everyone can lift their game, because I don't think these are bad aspirations to have in the world. You know, I love generosity, fun, and creativity, and care. Capital C, capital A, capital R, capital E. So I think that those are important things. And yeah, I think Weekly Ticket is an opportunity for me to go down there. I didn't realize how much I loved it until the pandemic came, and I actually thought I shouldn't go down, but that was it was a real tough time. Not being able to go down there, not having the regular practice. I missed people, I missed the connection, I missed so much. I mean, miss the outdoors, that sort of thing.
Yeah, David, you mentioned care, and I'm going to also say dare, capital D, capital A, capital R, capital E for you. but it feels like your work is so in situ, sort of in the world, amidst people, amidst situations, and not simply on stage in a particular context, which you can do and have done well. But it's remarkable how you cite it in the world, and how you invite the world into your performing, and how your performing invites the world in. And when you speak of a manifesto, I think what you've been talking to us today feels very much akin to a manifesto. What would you add if you were to add anything further to your manifesto of purposed being, performer, collaboratively embedded in the world? What might you add, David?
Look, it sounds like I've got my shit together. It sounds like I'm really confident. It sounds like I don't need anybody's help, but the opposite is true. I think as artists, we need to look after each other, I think. And that takes courage to look after other people. It takes courage to be vulnerable. It takes courage to keep friendships alive. It takes time, like anything, to work on all our relationships and those sorts of things. So, you know, there's challenges we all go through. There's doubts as artists. We can believe in anything as artists. You know, it's a wonderful skill, but you can also believe in things that aren't helpful or true necessarily. And so I think that, you know, that there's a dark side to being oversensitive, a hard challenge for that. But I think as a community, I think, you know, there's a sisterhood out there that are doing what we men should be doing more of. And I think we can take a few leaves out of their books in terms of how they look after each other better than we do, personally. But I think that's part of the manifesto, part of the aim, and part of, I think, where I am in my life. You know, you don't see as much of your kids. You don't have a role to play in terms of, well, for me anyway, my kids are grown up, but you don't have the same. It's not the same role, and I'm keen to have people in my life. I mean, Freddie, he says he's desperate for friends, and everyone thinks that's a funny thing to say, but it's true. It's true. I think, you know, I very much relate to good old Freddie in his honesty of naivety and his openness. But I think, you know, the idea of, for me, the big challenge is keeping up with my friends. You know, that's a harder thing to have. It's a harder thing to maintain. We all get busy doing our own things and our own projects and one thing or another, and too many wonderful people I've lost contact with. And so, you know, I think that's the big challenge. That's the gauntlet I'm throwing down to myself. And just, I'll give you my phone number now if you want to ring me up. But I think you're doing a wonderful job on the podcast. I think it's bringing people together and connecting people, and it's lovely for you to be getting people to share stories and something of themselves. I'm delighted in listening to it. It's a wonderful community, artistic, personal service that you're providing people with the opportunity to share that. And yeah, so well done, you fellas.
David, on that highly confirming note, I think we're heading towards what is going to be the end of this chat, time-wise. A delight it's been to hear you speak so in such an energized way about what you've done, what you do, and seemingly what you'll continue to do. It makes my heart bubble, I must say.
Well, come down to the station sometime, Kevin, and we'll do some bubbling together. And there's an open invitation for anyone out there to make contact with me and organise some time to get down there. The administration is, it's part of the building the bridges, and it's a hard thing to do. It's not what we ever signed up for, and it's challenging. It doesn't get easier as you get older. You don't kind of resign yourself to it as much. It's a tough one. So but I would love generally for people to come down anytime, catch up, have a soup afterwards, and chat and talk, and you can be down there in so many different capacities. That's the wonderful thing about it.
Lovely to see you. Take care.
Yeah.
We'll see you down the station.
Do we have to hang up now? Oh, we've come back.
Bloopers reel.